Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Well, I'm very excited to introduce you to Choosy Girl Bear and Choosy Boy Bear. This is Choosy Girl. She comes with a blouse, tie, pleated skirt and little Mary Jane shoes. Out of the two, if you are a complete beginner at crochet, I would say that Choosy Girl is the easiest. Her clothes are very, very straightforward. Just single crochet throughout. Oh, there's a bit of half double as well on the skirt. Now, all the clothes are completely removable. I can't bear it when you can't take the clothes off teddies or dollies. So that's Choosy Girl. Now, Choosy Boy, the only reason he's a little bit trickier is because of this chain stitching round the neck. I show you how to do it, and it's all on video how to do it. But if you're not confident with, a simple embroidery stitch, then Choosy Girl is easier. Choosy Boy's got what we call in the UK a tank top. So it's a sweater, and the little shirt is actually attached to the tank top. But again, it comes off. It's all got proper buttons at the back. Now, best of all, along with the pattern comes the little satchel. But inside the satchel and at the back of the actual written pattern, you can print out all these little books to go inside. Now, I love doing things like this, and I love doing computer graphics. So I've designed these little vintage books. You can even fill in your school and name and class and subject on them if you want. So there's 3 different coloured exercise books, and then the little ABC textbook has got proper publishing in it and barcode at the back. You can actually fill it in as well and practice your letters. Now, although these look quite intricate, they're really easy to make, because all the books just come as a long strip that you print off on your printer, cut them out, and then they just simply concertina up, and you can glue them, and then you've got these perfect little books. There's also a ruler, and I even show you how to make this little pencil, which looks really real. And this is made out of a wooden skewer for a barbecue. Just cut the end off it. Very easy to do. But I think any little boy or girl who's starting school or maybe changing schools would love to have a bear like this to wish him or her good luck. So today we're actually going to make the bear, and that's what's in this video. As you can see, this video is 2 hours long because I take you through every single stage of how to make the teddy bear. Now, for the clothes, you will need to download my pattern from Etsy. The videos for the clothes are very detailed, but I don't take you through every single stage, so they're shorter. The written pattern itself is extremely detailed. I don't know if you've ever used one of my patterns, but I do loads and loads of diagrams throughout, so you really don't need the video. At various stages throughout the pattern, I put a link. It's a YouTube link, so if you've got this open on your phone or open on your computer desktop, you can click on the link. So say you're stuck on this section, you can literally click on the link and it'll take you to that section in the video. It just saves you having to trawl through the whole video to get to the bit that you're stuck on. Hopefully you won't get stuck on anything. Now, the materials I'm using are the Soft Fun by Scheepjes. I know that's not how you pronounce it. I love this yarn because it's acrylic and cotton mixed. So it's very strong, but it's also incredibly soft. It almost feels like a merino. But it does mean, because it's cotton, when you make the clothes, it's nice to be able to press things with a steam iron just to get them really neat. And it doesn't melt, because it's got this cotton in it. It'll take a steam iron very, very well. Now, the bear itself, which we're going to do, he looks like this when he's naked. He's hinged at the legs, so he sits down and he's got proper feet, which means the shoes stay on. So I've made him in the Soft Fun in cedar, I think you call it, and the colour for the other bear I did in tawny. You don't have to use these yarns, but as long as you make the bear in the same yarn as you make the clothes, then there shouldn't be a problem. The clothes will fit okay. In America, I think we call this a light worsted yarn or a yarn number 3. For most of the pattern and for the bear and the clothes, I use a 3mm crochet hook and a 2.5 for any more detailed areas. I use lots of stitch markers, and you'll need various size darning needles. Okay, so the link to my pattern and the link to all the other videos for the clothes and the pattern for the clothes are down below. That'll take you to the link where you can find all the other videos for the clothes and for the written pattern. Right, let's have a go. Let's see how we get on. So starting with a slip knot, wrap the short end of yarn around your finger, push through a loop and pull, and now that's adjustable. So start with a chain of 7. 1, 2, 3 and 7. Now rather than working into these chains at the front, I'm going to work into these bumps at the back. So there's the first bump next to the hook, there's the second bump, and into there we put 2 single crochets. There's the first one and there's the second one. And now along the rest of the bumps we're going to put 4 more single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's your last bump sticking up, and into there we're going to put 5. 1, 2, 3. It starts to turn a corner, so you need to sort of flip your yarn to one side. So that's 3, 4 and 5. Now if that has caused a bit of a hole, it doesn't matter because you can close that up by pulling on the tail. Then we're going to go 4 across. 1. These are going through the both loops of these chains here. 2, 3 and 4. And the very last chain is just there, and into that we need to put 2 single crochets, so it's exactly like the other side. 1 and 2. So altogether you should have 17 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And into there, put a stitch marker so that you don't lose that last stitch. Right, round 2 is 2 single crochets in the first 2 stitches. There's 1 and 2. Into the next stitch, 1 and 2. Now 4 along. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Then in these 5 stitches around the top, you need to do 2 in each of these stitches. So that's 10 altogether. So I tend to count 10. 1, 2 in that first stitch, 3 and 4 in the next stitch, 9 and 10. 10. Then we're going to do 4 across, 1, 4, and then 2 single crochets in the last 2 stitches. 1, 2, next one, 1 and 2, and you can put your marker back there, and in that row or that round you'll have 26 stitches. On to round 3 is very easy. It's just 26 stitches all the way around. 1, 2, 3, keep going all the way and put your last stitch in where the marker is, and I'll see you at the other side. At the end of round 3 you'll still have 26 stitches all the way around. Now it's a good idea now to have a look and see how you can count your rows in amigurumi. We're working in a spiral round and round, so that means that's the top, and then this is the other side, and you can clearly see you've done 3 rows. That's 1 row, 2 rows and 3 rows. At this point it's a good idea, whoops, to just weave in that tail, pull it so that it's closed up that hole nice and tight, thread your yarn, and then I'm just going to push it just through those few stitches. This will be the inside, so you won't see any of this. And also remember that this is the inside of the foot, the messy side, and that's your neat side. And the neat side always has this kind of chain around it, which you don't see when you have it on this side. And we're on to row 4. Now in row 4, we're going to start to decrease to form the heel at this side and the foot toes at the other side. So to make an invisible decrease that won't show, put your hook through the first loop only of that first stitch. Then I kind of twist my hook around and under the first loop of the second stitch, yarn over, pull through both those loops, which is a bit tricky, but just ease your hook across. At this stage, just pull on your yarn a bit, just to bring your stitches close together, not too tight. Yarn over again and pull through 2 loops. So that's your first decrease right in there. And now we need to do 5 single crochets along. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And now over the next 12 stitches around, we're going to do 6 single crochet decreases. Yarn over, pull the yarn to pull it together, pull through 2. There's 1. Now be careful that you're not working back into that decrease stitch. It kind of feels sometimes that you want to. This is your next one along. This is the second. 2. 5. Can you see how I'm pulling each time? And 6. Then we need to work 5 across like the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then a decrease in those last 2 stitches. So take out your stitch marker, and there's the decrease on the other side of the heel. And you can really start to see the little foot taking form now. So pop your stitch marker back in. And at the end of that row, you should have 18 stitches. Right, so going on to round 5. We need to do 5 single crochets along. Again, remember, don't work into there. That's part of your decrease. There's your stitch. 1 and 5. Then we're going to do 4 decreases. There's 1, 2, 3 and 4. And then if you've got 5 stitches left, you know you've got your count right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 1, and take out your stitch marker, and that's 5. And at the end of round 5, you should have 14 single crochets. Now round 6 is the last round of the foot, and I have to say, I think the foot is probably the hardest part of the bear to make, so take that bit slowly. The rest is a lot easier. So in round 6, we do 5 single crochets. Make sure you're working into that first little stitch there, not into this part here. So there's your first stitch that you're going to work into, and you need to do 5. 1 and 5. And the last 2 decreases you're going to have to do. There's your first decrease in there. And then your second decrease is on the other side of the foot. And then if you've got 5 stitches left, you know you've got the right count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. 1. Take out your stitch marker, and there's 5. And the foot is now finished. So just push this all into shape. And let's at this point just count our rows so that it helps you get used to counting rows when you're doing the rest of the bear. Always work out which is the 2 central stitches in that spiral. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. You've done 6 rows. There you go. At this stage, it's a good idea to stuff the very toe of the foot, because as you start to work up the leg, you won't be able to get in there. So just get a bit of your stuffing and just start to stuff into the toe. And at the same time, you can start to shape the foot. You want it to be nice and wide at the end. So if you just stuff that in there, I'll get a little bit more. Stuff that into there. Like that. And now we'll be continuing in rows. I think it's 22 rows altogether. So counting from the bottom of the foot, from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all together you need to do 22 rows. And now you're just going to go round and round and round. So rather than having to keep putting your stitch marker back in after every row, which is a bit of a pain, I take that out now and I just start to count 12, because there's 12 stitches in the leg. And as long as you keep counting 12, 1, 2, 11 and 12. So keep doing that all the way around, and then when we've done a few rows, we can count to see how many we've done. You don't have to keep remembering, oh, which row am I on, because it's very easy to count now from the bottom of the foot that you need to do 22. And as you go round the foot now, it's a lot easier to just sort of pinch your work together. 2, 3, 11 and 12. Now you can keep putting the stitch marker in if you like, but it's just a pain to do that. I much prefer to just keep counting 12 and keep going up and up the leg. I'm just going to put a bit more stuffing in at this stage. I love that foot. Can't tell you how long it took me to get that foot perfect. And it's a perfect foot for a shoe to go on. And the shoe stays on without falling off, because you've got a nice little heel there for it to hook round. So I'm going to stuff a bit more in there, because I want that to be a nice shape. So as you go up the leg, keep stuffing it so that you don't have a great long piece to have to stuff down. And I'll see you at the top. Right, so I've now finished 22 rows, and you'll notice that when you point the foot towards you, the row has kind of ended almost in the middle. Well, it's to the left of the middle. Now the first leg that you make will be the left leg as you're looking at the bear. So it's this leg that you're doing, the bear's right leg, but we're looking at it from the left. And we want this to finish at this end. So what we need to do is do another stitch. Yes, just to bring it down into down towards the side. I would do another slip stitch. So that's pulling your yarn through and through again. And then we need to pull through cut your yarn and pull it through. So there's the slip stitch going over this stitch underneath. And now we want to do an invisible finish, an invisible stitch going across this one and into this one. There's your last stitch and you've pulled through your yarn. So we want to make an invisible stitch over the top of this one and joining it into the one next to it. So we go through the back of there, pulling through, don't pull too tight, and then you want to go down the middle of that stitch and just out through there. Don't pull too tight or you'll lose the stitch. And now you will still have 12 stitches around. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. And so you kind of need to just weave this in. It's difficult to weave it in because you can't weave inside. So I kind of go in and out of the leg, and it sort of disappears. Now it's a case of just stuffing that leg equally. Don't stuff it too hard because you don't need the foot needs to be a bit sort of solid so it stays in shape, but this needs to stay sort of soft and squishy. But rounded like that. A bit more. So that's the left leg done. Now the right leg is exactly the same, but with the right leg, we need to finish on the right hand side. So you've finished there, and you need to pull back on your last row of 22. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, I'd pull back 4 stitches and then stuff that leg in the same way. Right, so now we want to form this little hinge at the top of the leg and continue the body, and that means the teddy can sit down easily and it's not all stiff, so you need a hinge at the top here. So bring your 2 legs together, you pull this one back 4, and now what we need to do, make sure it's stuffed equally, so put that to one side. So now you want to chain 1 and pull, and then we need to do 6 stitches along the top of this leg. So your first one will go right into the edge, right there, under that one, and the corresponding one right at the back, and do a single crochet through there. That's 1, through the front 2, through the back 2, and single crochet. That's 2, through the front, through the back, under all the loops, That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the last one is right on the edge there. Just get that bit tricky. And 6. So you must get 6 stitches across the top of that leg. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we need to chain 2. Bring up your other leg, flatten it so it faces forward, and find those first 2 stitches right at the edge. So we're looking at that one and that one that you're going to have to go through. So that's your first one that you now do a single crochet in. Then the second under the back and the front, third, fourth, fifth, whoops, and on the very end is the last one. Again, that's not so easy to work into, but just as long as it's there. So altogether, you'll have 6 stitches at the top of each leg and 2 in the middle. And now we want to start to work round here to form the body. So at the end of that row, you need to chain 1, and we're going to work through every single loop of each stitch, but on one side, so it's through the front loops only, and we should get 28 around. So through the front loop only, not both loops, we work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It's just a bit difficult to work into that one. 6, then 2 more stitches across that chain in the middle. So that's 1 and 2 right into the middle, and then another 6 down this side into the front loop only. 1 and 6. So now we want to have the same number of stitches on the other side. So without chaining, you need to turn your work, and if you can just see here, these are the other side of the chain. So there'll be 6 to work into here, 2 in the middle, and 6 on the end. So as I say, without doing a turning chain, it's just a bit tricky to begin with, but it gets easier. You want to work into that first stitch right there. Let me just count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, so that is the first stitch. One, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, then 2 in that chain right in there. There's the first chain, 1 and 2, and then 6 across the other leg. And there's the last one just there, 6. So I'll just count those stitches again to make sure we have 28. 6, 27, 28. So now it's a case of working round and round to form the body, but we want them to be a bit fatter. So that's your first row of the body. On the second row, we need to do 6 single crochets starting at the back. Oh, actually, I would just put a stitch marker in there because it is going to get confusing later on. That's your last stitch. So we need to do 6 single crochets along in both loops. The first row is a bit tight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then do an increase in the next stitch. That's 2 single crochets in the same stitch. Whoops, don't split your wool. Then another 6 stitches. 1, 6, and then 2 just on the edge there. 1 and 2. Then coming round the other side, 6 more. And 6. And an increase. I hope I did an increase. Increase. Whoops, got caught up. And then 6 more. 6. And then an increase just there. And put your stitch marker back in. So now you'll have 32 stitches. And keep going. The pattern tells you exactly how many rows to keep going for until we have to start to decrease at the top of the body. Right, it's easy to count the rows on the body. It starts right there with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 rows. Now the 18th row is going to be where we start to decrease to go in for the shoulders. So we now need to curve the body inwards. Okay. So this is going to be, do put a stitch marker in for this and every other round. Right, so row 18, 1 single crochet in the next 2 chains. 1, 2, and then a decrease through the front loop only. Oops. And then 2 again, 1, 2, and then a decrease. So keep going round the body, 2 single crochets, 1, 2, and then a decrease, all the way round until you get to the last 2 stitches. And the last 2 stitches, that one and that one, will be a decrease. So keep going round, 2 single crochets and then a decrease, and I'll see you at the other side. Okay, I've just got 2 more stitches to work in there. 1, 2, and then I know I've got my count right because I've only got 2 stitches left, and they'll be a decrease. Okay, so at this point, it's a good idea to start stuffing the body. So small amounts of the stuffing. And sort of push it through to the sides as you're stuffing him, so that he's got some shape, you know, give him a tummy, or her, sorry. There we go, just pushing him and pulling it to the sides so that you can see he's, you don't want him flat, you want him rounded. And also you want his little trousers or her little skirt to stay up, so you need a fat bear to make the clothes fit. Get plenty in there. I'll just go on to the next row and then do a bit more stuffing halfway through because it's difficult to make that stay. That's looking nice. So on the next row, which is row 19, pop your stitch marker back in there. And now we need to do 1 single crochet and then a decrease all the way round. So that's 1 and a decrease, 1 and a decrease, 1 and a decrease. Now, as the hole gets smaller, 1 and a decrease. You can put more stuffing in. Yes, I should really, I'll do 1 more. 1 and a decrease. And I see now you can start to really get a bit more stuffing in there. Right, I'll continue doing that row and then on to the next row. And so at the end of this row, we will have 16 stitches all the way round. And then for the last row, we'll be doing decreases all the way round. So I haven't finished my last row yet, but it does mean that I can now really get to stuff him. So he's got a round tummy and a bit of a bottom. Let's really push it to the sides like that. It's amazing how much kapok you can actually get into one of these little bears. There's a bit more. Right, so I'll finish that last round and then I'll still be able to stuff the top. And in the last round, we do just decreases all the way round. I've got one more decrease to do. I've taken out my stitch marker because I want to just get more of this stuffing, because it's all kind of like empty round here now. So I want to get that in round the sides. Stuff it round so he's got some shoulders there. That's better. A bit more there, is a bit loose. There's lots of room there. As I say, he wants to have plenty of kapok in him so that the clothes have something to rest on. And also that he's even. I think that's about right. A little bit more under there. And that's the body. Just got so let me just do another decrease there. We should end up with 8 stitches when we've finished. You can leave that there because that's going to get covered up by the head. So what I tend to do now is tie this off. Right, so now we'll do the head. To start the head, you need a slip knot. And again, it's really important that you wrap that short end around your finger, push it through the loop that you've made, pull, and now that's adjustable. And now we're going to just chain 2. There's your first chain and your second chain. And in that very first chain, which is the second chain from the hook, right into there, we're going to make 6 single crochets. So that's 1, again back into there, 2, just move that out of the way, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So there you've got 6 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In each of those stitches we're going to put 2 single crochets. So there'll be 12 in all on round 2. So count as you go, 2 in each stitch. 1, 2. 11 and 12. Now into there we need to put a, because now you'll start to get lost if you don't put a stitch marker on the end, in the last stitch at the end of each row. Always put your stitch marker. So row 3 is now going to be a sequence of 1 single crochet and then 2 in the next stitch. So that's an increase in the next stitch. So that's 1 in the next stitch and 2 in the stitch after. That's and then 2 in the last stitch where the stitch marker is. Now from now on you'll always end up, if you've got the count right, you'll always end up putting 2 stitches in the last stitch where the marker is, and if that doesn't work out then you know you've got your stitches wrong. So at the end of round 3 we should have 18 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So counting our rows, 1, 2, now 3, and now we're on row 4. So this time we'll be doing a sequence of 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches. So it's 1 and 2 and then an increase. So it's 1 and 2, then an increase. Then 1 and 2, and here we go again, an increase. That's 2 stitches into the last stitch. At the end of that round you should have 24 stitches. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. Now the 5th row we'll be doing 3 single crochets, then an increase in the next stitch all the way round, and at the end of the 5th row you'll have 30 stitches. Then the 6th row you'll do 4 single crochets, then an increase, which will give you 36 stitches, and then on the 7th row you'll do 5 single crochets, then an increase all the way round, which will give you 42 stitches. Okay, and I'll see you at the end of there. I've now got to the end of row 7, and your rows are very easy to count. From the middle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now row 8 is a little bit different because I only want to increase the head just a little bit more by 3 stitches. So this time we're going to do 13 single crochets and then an increase all the way round. So it's 13 and an increase, 13 and an increase, 13 and an increase in the last stitch. And that takes you to, that'll be row 8. So then from row 9 all the way to 19, we're just going to do single crochets all the way around, and that'll be 45 stitches all the way around. I'll see you when I get to the end of those rows. I've now done 19 rows. Now we're going to start to decrease to bring the shape of the head in. So we're basically just going backwards from the increases that we did. So the first lot of decreases will be 13 single crochets and then a decrease all the way round. So my last 13 stitches came to here, and now you're always going to end up with 2 at the end. And as long as you end up with 1, 2, and then where the marker stitch is, that's going to be your final decrease stitch. So take your marker out, up through both those front loops, yarn over, pull through both, little tug, and pull through the yarn. So that has now got you back down to 42 stitches, and you can count those if you like. But I know I've got my stitch count right because I ended up with 2 at the end, so I don't need to count. Now then, row 21 will be 5, put your stitch marker back in, 5 single crochets and then a decrease. Again, be aware not to put your stitch into there. That's your decrease row. And if you're a bit confused, take this out and redo your decrease and keep a real eye on where it lands so you can see where to put your next stitch in. So row 21 will be 5 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 single crochets and a decrease all the way round, and your last 2 stitches will be a decrease. So do that all the way round. Then row 22 will be 4 single crochets and a decrease all the way round, and I'll see you at the end of row 22. I'm just coming to the end of row 22. So I'm taking out that stitch marker from the row before. I've got 2 single crochets left to decrease in through the first, the front loop only, yarn over, pull through, give a little tug, yarn over and pull through 2, then immediately put that stitch marker back into that stitch. And at the end of row 22 you should have, just pull that, 30 stitches. So now, because it's closing up, we can start to stuff the head a little bit. So I'm just going to take that stitch marker out and leave myself a bit of a loop there so I don't lose where I'm up to. Now the head needs to really be stuffed well because you want him to have a nice rounded shaped head. So take this slowly, and as you put the stuffing in, push it with your fingers right out to the sides so that you're getting that nice round shape and you don't end up with a long sausage, but a nice... It's amazing actually how much stuffing will go into the head, because as you're pushing it through like this, you're also creating a hole there in which to put more stuffing. Whoops. And spread it across. Really give it a good push up through the top there. You don't want him to have a flat head either. Keep adding stuffing. Get some more. Now we can add some more when we've closed the hole up a little bit more, but you've just got to get as much as you can in to begin with, and making sure he doesn't have a flat head. Right, I'll just put a bit more in there whilst I can, because you can really... Now I'm going to close it up a bit. So this is now row 23. And on row 23, we'll do 3 single crochets, then a decrease. So remember to put your stitch marker right back into that stitch. Try and move the stuffing out of the way. And this will start to really close up now. So again, look very carefully to see where your next stitch is. It's right in there. 1, 2, 3, and a decrease. Don't forget that little tug, because the gaps will start to show now. Then again. So I've now got to the end of row 23, where I was doing 3 and then a decrease. And at the end of row 23, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 23, 24. And I still feel I can get a bit more stuffing in there. Bring the stuffing back over. Particularly underneath here, because you don't want him to be a chinless wonder. He wants to have a good shape. And if you don't put enough stuffing in, the shape won't stay. Oops. But at the same time, we don't want too much of the stuffing, so much stuffing that it starts to show too much. You just want to very, very vaguely be able to see little holes there. Okay. So 24, I'll now go round, put my stitch marker back in, wherever it's gone. Do put your stitch marker back in before your next row, which will be row 24, and we'll do 2 in every stitch and then a decrease, 2 and then a decrease all the way round. And at the end of that row, we'll have 18 stitches. Right, I've now done my decrease on 2 in every single crochet and then a decrease on my 24th row, and I'm just making sure this really, it's still big enough to be able to get your thumb up there to make sure he's not got a flat head, and that he's round, and that if there's any bits under here that where you think you can get a bit more, just stuff those under to give his chin a bit of a shape. You don't want him to be this chinless wonder. Whoops. But at the same time, you don't want the stuffing to be showing through too much either. Okay, so this is now the final row, because we're going to stop when there's only 12 stitches left. And on the final row, it does get tricky, so take it slowly. You're literally doing 1 single crochet, pull every stitch quite tight at this stage, and then the decrease. And as I say, you really do have to do this quite slowly and pulling tight so that your stitches aren't all baggy. 1, and then a decrease. I can't stress highly enough how you need to just tug on that yarn. Then, and it's really difficult to work out where to put your next stitch. 1, and then a decrease. Whoops. So that's 1 single crochet and then a decrease all the way round. So you'll be decreasing into the last stitches, and you'll end up with 12 stitches. And you can leave it at there. Then pull through a long loop, just knot it at the end. And you need almost like, oh, I don't know, 3/4 of a meter, because you're going to sew this head to the body with this long tail. So leave a decent long tail at the end to do that with. A good 3/4 of a meter. Now the ears are exactly like the head, but a mini version, and then you fold them in half, basically. So again, for the ears, start with a chain of 2, and then work 6 single crochets into the second hook. Second chain from the hook, sorry. 1, 2, flick that out of the way. 3, 4, 5 and 6, and then we go on to 12, so that's 2 in each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 11 and 12. At this stage it's a good idea to put your stitch marker in. Then of course we'll be doing 1 on your third round, 1 and then an increase in each stitch around. And 1, and we know we've got that stitch count right because the increase is going into that stitch with the stitch marker. So that's row of 6, row of 12, then the third row is a row of 18. So the fourth row will be 2 single crochets, then an increase all the way round. The fifth row will be 3 single crochets and an increase all the way round, and that will get you to 30 stitches all the way round, and then we start the decrease. I've now completed 9 rows. The first row 6 into a ring, the second 2 single crochets in each stitch to make 12. The third was 1 single crochet, then an increase all the way round that made 18. Then the 1, 2, 3, 4 was 2 single crochets, then an increase all the way round to make 24. Then the fifth row was 3 single crochets, then an increase all the way round to make 30. So then row 6, 7, 8 and 9 was just 30 single crochets all the way round. And what we're going to eventually do is fold this in half to form an ear, but I just need to bring it in a little bit on the last row. So row 10 will be 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then a decrease. So 3 single crochets, then a decrease all the way round. Just putting in my final decrease, so that makes 24 stitches all around. Now, because we've been working in rounds, if we just finish off here, there'll be a big jump from that first row to there, and it'll look quite messy. So to finish off, what I like to do is a slip stitch into the next stitch, pull through your yarn, and we're not going to sew the ear to the head with this yarn, so it doesn't have to be long. We're going to sew it with a, well, I'll show you when we do it. So now I'm just going to put an invisible finishing stitch. So that's your slip stitch, and we need to do an invisible stitch just over this one here to go into there, and that will leave us with 24 stitches. So through the back of there, pull through, and then down into there. And now you see it's completely smooth all the way along. There isn't a jump there from your last stitch. And then you just need to weave in all your ends and make another one. Great. Now we're going to make the arms. I'm leaving the actual nose till the last because that's the tricky bit with the embroidery. So the arms and the paws need to have this little sort of sloping effect like this. And they're a little bit more delicate than the legs. So there's only 10 stitches around as opposed to 12 like the legs had. So I'll show you how we start that. This time, just as we started the head and the ears with a slip knot, chain 2, 1 and 2. We're now going to work 5 single crochets into that second chain from the hook. Again, because we did our slip knot correctly, we can close up that ring very easily. So 2 single crochets into each stitch. This time we'll make 10. So 1, 2, 9 and 10. Pop your stitch marker back in there. Oops, I've lost it. There we go. And now we're going to do 1 single crochet and then an increase in the next stitch. 1 and 2. 1 single crochet and an increase in the next stitch. One single crochet and an increase in the next stitch. 1 and 2. 15 stitches. So rows 4 and 5 are just 1 single crochet in each stitch across. So that's 15 and then another 15. Now row 6, we need to put the decreases in to form the curve on only just one side of the arm. So row 6 is 2 decreases at the beginning. So there's your first decrease and there's your second decrease. And then we just single crochet all the way around to the stitch marker. I think it's 11 stitches. 1, 2, 10, and the last one is 11. All the way round, that's 13 stitches altogether. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 stitches altogether. Now then in row 7, we're going to do exactly the same. Put your stitch marker back in. So you've got your decreases at the beginning, 2 of them. One and 2, and then single crochet all the way to the stitch marker. 1, 2, 9, 10 single crochets up to the stitch marker, and that will give you 11 stitches all the way around. We want to get it down to 10. So on the 8th row, let me just check that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th. Yes, we're going on to the 8th row. We're just doing 1 single crochet at the beginning. sorry, 1 single crochet decrease, or a decrease stitch, 2 together. So that's 1 decrease, and then it's getting a bit close now. 1, and then do 1, 2. 9 single crochets plus the decrease gives you 10 single crochets all around. So there's your first one under that loop. 1, whoops, let's get that in focus. Is that in focus? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, move that across, 9, and just 10 just there. And the starting chain I've buried, pulled it tight so it's closed up there, and I've just buried inside there. So now for the rest of the arm, we'll go from, let me just count that again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 23. We're just going to go round and round and round. Stuff that little arm, stuff the little paw soon so that you don't lose that. You want his little paw, they don't have to be stuffed a lot, just so that they stay in shape. And keep stuffing the arm. And now, rather than putting in your stitch marker every time, just keep going round and round and round and counting 10. 1, 2, 10. Now don't worry if you lose count, because sometimes it's easier just to keep crocheting, because it's very easy at the end just to count how many rows, and I'll show you what it looks like at the other end so that you don't have to bother keeping an eye on where that last stitch is, because it just gets a bit boring counting 10, 10, 10. Just keep going, then count until you've got approximately 23 rows, and then we'll look and see where we want the row to actually end. Okay, so I've finished my 2 arms with the paws on the end, and they're going to face inwards like this and go over the body. Now I've completely lost track of where my stitch started and where it ended, but it doesn't matter as long as you know that you've got approximately 23 stitches, and you can count those: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 takes me to there. So I sort of starting on a 24th row there. But what you actually want is, if we're going to have this paw leaning over that way, we want this back to be slightly higher than the front, and it will automatically do that. So you just have to decide, if I count from the back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So to make the back slightly higher than the front, I just need to make it higher on this side. I'm just going to go across to the edge there. Finish with a slip stitch like so. Now we know that that will sew over the top of there. If it was the other way around, you see, you'd end up with that bit sticking up and you wouldn't be able to sew it over the arm. So I just started to do half a 24th row. Now this side needs to go the other way, so this side needs to be higher. So let's count from the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I think we can afford to go round again to the other side. Finish with a slip stitch just to bring it back down to the same. So they are now still exactly the same length, and the backs are overlapping. Sorry, the back is slightly higher than the front on both sides, so that you can sew them in like this. So again, leave a long tail. I'm not very happy with the tail that I've left on here. It's not long enough because we're going to sew the arms with the tail at the end. But I'll sort that out when I come to it. So do leave a long, oh, I've got another knot here. There we go. Pull through. You don't need to knot this end because you want it to stay nice and flat. Long tail. And stuff the arm, but don't stuff it right to the top. You want to leave a bit of a flat bit so that that sits neatly onto the shoulder on both sides. So there's your left arm and your right arm. And now onto the nose. This is a little bit different to what we've been doing, but I'll take you through each stage to make it easier. So again, start with a slip knot and chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Similar to the foot, we're going to work in those bumps at the back, and you're going to put 2 single crochets in the second bump from the hook. 1 and 2. Then you're going to put 1 single crochet in the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and in the last bump, oops, you're going to put 3 stitches. 1, 2 and 3. That you can now pull tight. So working along the other side of the chain, we're going to put 1 single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. 2, 3 and 2 in the last stitch. Oh, no, sorry, 1 in the last stitch. So that would be 4 single crochets along, 1 in the last stitch. So altogether, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that's the end of round 1. Put in your stitch marker. Round 2, you'll need to do 2 single crochets in each of the first 2 stitches. Now that's just your turning chain there. So we'll put 1 in there, 2, and then 2 in the next, 1 and 2, and then 3 more single crochets along. 1, 2 and 3, And then in the 3 single crochets at the end, you need to put 2. So 2 single crochets in the next one. 1, 2, 2 in the next. 1, 2 and 2 in the next. So then we're going to do 3 single crochets along. 1, 2, 3, and then 2 in the last one. 1 and 2. So at the end of that round, you'll have 18 stitches all the way round. Now then, row 3 will be 1 single crochet in the first stitch, then 2 in the next. 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and then 2 in the next. You're now going to do 4 single crochets along. 1, 2, 3 and 4. So you'll do 2 in the next stitch, 1 and 2, 1 in the next stitch, 2 in the next, 1 in the next, and 2 in the next. 2. Then you'll do 4 single crochets along. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 in the last. So at the end of 1, 2, 3, you'll have 24 stitches all the way round. So the rest of the nose, which will be rows 4, 5 and 6, you're just going to go around 24 stitches for 3 rows. And then I'll show you how we finish the end. Now I'm just coming to that last stitch. And again, because we're working in a round, we don't want a big lump going down to the bottom. So the stitch just before the last stitch we'll make into a slip stitch, and that brings it closer to the next row. Pull through your yarn and do an invisible finish over the top of this one and through into the next one. So that slip stitch is covering up that stitch that's underneath. And then we're going to go over this one to create another one, and then you'll end up with the same amount of stitches, 24 stitches around. Go back through the middle of there. I would just turn the nose inside out and then just weave in your end neatly at the back there. Maybe go down the other way just a bit to stop it from slipping, and then cut off your tail quite short. Make sure that's pulled nice and tight. You can weave that in as well if you think that your teddy's going to get a lot of play, but I'm just going to tuck it in there and bury it. So now, where you can barely see where I've finished, but I've just finished there. As you can see, this row is now sloping down into the other one, but we still want that to go on the bottom. So that's the bottom of the nose. Okay, to do the little nose and mouth takes a bit of trial and error, and you might want to practice first. I'm dreading doing this on camera because it's bound to go wrong, but let's go ahead and see how we get on. Remember that the bottom of the nose is where you ended, so you can see that sort of messy sloping line. Make sure that's on the bottom and your neat row is on the top. Then take your black yarn, and I've put quite a big knot in the end of it, just because it saves it from pulling through if it happens to slip through, and you're not going to see the inside anyway. So make sure it's the right way up. There's your central line where you started to crochet around, whoops, round like that. So we're going to work on that the top of that first row, and you can see where I've pulled out stitches already, so it's getting to look a bit messy. So there's the central line, there's your first row, go into the middle and slope out at quite a decent angle to be two rows up. You want to go out at quite an angle and go into the middle of a stitch. If you go into a hole, that hole can end up getting bigger and bigger. And then sort of balance that triangle on the other side. Then go back into the middle. Now you want to keep, I'll go another one in the middle now. Keep this line at the top as flat as you can, back into the middle. And this is where we just start to closely embroider along that line. Carefully making sure each stitch lies next to the next one. And don't pull too tight. But at the same time, you don't want any loose loops because they'll get caught on something. All the way. Now I'm just going to go back in there. I'm now going to work from the other side just to sort of balance it a bit. So Let's bring it up through there. And then bring it down there. Oops. Now that's crossed over, but that might be all right because it just wants to balance with the other side. Down through there. I'm getting a double strand, so just make sure that doesn't happen. If you feel you're getting too much or too big a hole here, just tuck the next stitch in behind the others. I'm quite pleased with this. Just stick that in. I'm not going to go straight into there because that's just getting a bit too too thick. Not bad at all. So to make the top of the nose look really neat, what you can do is just go back into the very top corner and do a stitch all the way across the top to the other corner. And then all those jaggy edges there will just neatly disappear. Then for the little mouth, you're going to come down from the middle again. Whoops. Down 2. Then across. I don't want to go in there because there's a big hole there and that's going to really show if I start to put a stitch in. So I'm just going to go right in the middle, whoops, of that stitch. That's why it's really good to have a darning needle with a big eye and a very sharp. Careful when you pull that through because you don't want to mess up the stitch. Hold on to it. That's going to go back into there along that line. And then same on the other side. Oops, so it's the same size. Through there. Don't pull too hard and back. Through there. And he has a neat little face. You can add some more stitches if you think you need to. I don't want to ruin it at this stage, but I'm just thinking I might want another one. Just in there. Just to widen that a bit. Needs a bit gappy there, so I might just stick another one up through there. And just down. Whoa, that's gone a bit weird. Down through there. Oops. Lovely. Then you can just weave in that tail at the back and snip it off. Snip off your other tail. Doesn't matter what it looks like inside here because that's all going to get buried. There you've got your little face. So now the muzzle. To place this in the correct position, I've actually counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 rows down from the top and placed it directly under that 11th row. And from the bottom, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows showing, and then just pin it round with as many pins as possible to keep it all scrunched up. You don't want it flat on the face. You want it to have a nice raised muzzle. And we haven't stuffed it yet, so it's still a bit squashy, but we'll stuff that later. Now, when I sew on the muzzle and the ears, I don't like to use an ordinary strand of yarn because it's too thick and bulky and it looks messy. So if you take a decent length of yarn, cut it, and then twist the end, it releases all the different strands, and you can just pull out one of those strands quite easily and sew with this, which makes a much neater finish. Also, I use a smaller darning needle just to make those little neat stitches. So thread your yarn. Now, I'm going to sew all the way around here, but then leave a gap because I want to be able to stuff the nose. So let's start about here. So begin by anchoring going through a gap in the head and just anchor your yarn there, leaving a long tail that you can sew in later. Just sew round that stitch. It won't show because the yarn's so much thinner than it was. Might go round twice. That's held there. And now we need to go back through that gap and up through your first stitch, just through the bottom. If you can just see, I'm going to come up through the bottom there of that stitch, pull, and then go, I'll take that pin out, go down the other side of the other stitch, and that'll hold it in place. Goes directly down, but then out again, away from the muzzle and through another hole. So that's anchored. Now we want to come through this stitch. So we go back up through the gap, through the bottom of that stitch, and down over into the other stitch to hold it, and away from the muzzle and out through a hole. There, that's anchored there. You can keep checking if you lose it, if you lose where you're up to, because the stitches are very well hidden. Just slide your needle and you can see where your last stitch was. So I'm now making sure you don't push it out of shape. I'm going up through that one. Up through there. It doesn't matter that you're squashing the nose down. And down the other side. And out, away from the nose. Keep checking and having a look that things are in the right position, because if they're not, and the nose has got flatter or pulled out somehow, you can take the stitches out at this stage. But I think that's looking all right. So where am I up to? I've done that stitch there, so I'm coming into this one. Just make sure I don't want it to go above that line. So up through there. Oops. And then down through the next one and away from the nose. Whoops. Take your time over it because this is really quite important to get this looking neat. Just make sure we've got that in the right place and that we're not going above that 11th row. So work your way all the way round, leaving a gap, and I'll see you round at the other side. That's where I started, and I've just pulled my yarn through here, and I've got a little gap there that I'm just going to stuff with stuffing with the end of my crochet hook, and you can really now pull that nose or push it into shape. Whoops, gosh, it looks like I've actually missed a stitch there, so I'll have to go back and do that. This, you can actually see if you need to put any more. If you're starting to see gaps, it means you need more stitches in there. So put plenty of stuffing in so that holds in place like that. Yes, he's looking really cute now. Just want to get a bit of a flat bit here where the nose, the underneath of the nose was. Yes, that's perfect. So I'm now going to just sew up around the rest of the nose. So that's, where am I up to? Yes, I can see I went into there. So I'm now going to go up through that stitch and down through the other side, through the bottom and out through a hole. So I now need to come up through this stitch and then down the other side. Where are we now? Right, so I need another one in there. Last chance at this stage to bung a bit more stuffing if you think you need it. And then when we've finished, I'm then going to just weave this yarn in and out through various holes just to lose the thread. Doesn't matter if you pull it out through the back, and you can wind it round a stitch if you like we did at the beginning, just to lose that yarn tail somewhere inside the head. And then we'll do the ears. So before we put the ears in place, just find out where the last stitch was, and it's easy to do because the last stitch slopes down to the end there. Make sure that's in the middle and then bend your ear in, so you're going to get a nice little ear shape. Then we need to just sew the front to the back with some invisible stitches, and I do that by just going up through there to lose the yarn. And then just go back in and go over a stitch and out through another stitch, and putting a little stitch just over two stitches. It doesn't matter if you don't do every single one. The idea is not to be able to see these stitches. So that's why I'm just going over and over. That's going down through there. It just gets buried, but it fixes the back to the front. And you'll see why we're doing this later on. So I'll just stick that through there, through there. Then just weave in this end. Might go over two, just go over twice there. And then just weave that back up through there. So you can't see the needle, because if you can see the needle, you'll see the cotton. And then these can be snipped off. So do that to both ears, and then we'll position the ears onto the head. Now then, just take a bit of time to really line up those ears and pin them well into position. I've already put this one on, so I don't need those pins anymore. So look at it from all different angles. They need to be kind of facing forward, because that makes him look cute. If his ears are too far back, he'll look angry. So you want his ears to really curve forward. Now I'm placing them 1, 2, 3, 4 on the 5th, or 1, 2, 3, 4, just below the 4th row down, and curving round, making sure you get that nice curve so that the bottom edge lines up just below the top of the nose. So it's not just, you don't want them coming down here, you want them just lining up with the top of the nose. Now, like before, when we did the muzzle, I'm getting a single strand of yarn out of the other large strand that I took, and this is the best way I've found of actually doing this. So anchor your yarn anywhere on the head. Now this isn't going to show because I'm just going round a stitch there because these strands are so thin, but leave a long tail because you'll want to weave that into the head later. And just go round once, maybe twice, and that really holds that piece of yarn in place and you can't see it. So now we want to really anchor this corner. So I'm going to go in through a hole, not through a stitch, but where there's a gap, and out at this very corner without moving where you want it to be. So I've just left one pin in. I'm going to come out, maybe just slightly forward, about there. And then I'm going to catch the very edge of the ear, just down the bottom there. So I've caught the ear, and now I'm going to push that needle right back down underneath the ear and out through the middle, through a gap, making sure you don't come through a stitch. So that's really held that in place, and we can actually take that pin out. What you don't want is to be able to lift the ear, but we'll be going over that again shortly, and you'll see how in a minute. So now we're making our way to the other side so that we get both corners really anchored and in place, so we don't have to worry about the position of them anymore or losing the position of them. So I'm going to just take that corner And then, sorry, down through the bear again and out through somewhere else away from the ear. And I'm going to go back in and do that again to really make sure that ear is not going to go anywhere. So I can take that pin out now. It's much easier to see that I go in underneath the ear, grab the corner. Oops, because I don't want to see that stitch, so that's a bit... I might just actually come out first and not grab yet, so that I can really tug on that. And then I'm going to go through the bottom of the corner of the ear. Give that a good pull. Now back down through the head and out through another hole in the head away from the ear. So now we've got the two corners secure, and we'll be going over that one again in a minute. And now we're going to do exactly what we did before. It's a little bit harder with the ear. Oops, because you have to bend it round. Now we're only going to try and catch the back of the ear. Don't try to catch the inside, because that's when you'll get into a complete mess. And that inside has been stitched to the back anyway, so it's not going to go anywhere. So if we just come back up through here, through that stitch, and then across to the other stitch and down into the head and out away from the ear, and pull that down. We want to keep this nice curve, so just keep checking that things are in the right place on the bear. Let's put those out of the way. Now I'll pull this one out because I think I can now. If you want to check where you are up to, if you just slide your needle, you can see that you've stitched that bit down, and it's now this bit that you need to stitch down. So go back through that hole, up through that stitch. Where is that stitch? Ah, yes. Up through that stitch. And across. In fact, I've gone a bit too far there, but don't worry, it won't show. I'm going to go back down there and do this again. I'd gone too high up. I just want to get over this stitch here, so let's go. Make sure that's pulled out. It's not easy to see. Through there and across the stitch. Down into the other side, and again away from the bear and through a hole, so that those stitches completely disappear. So my next stitch will be through and over these two stitches. So back in through that hole, up through the top of that stitch, and down through that stitch. Now that's interesting. You can see there I've got a bit of split yarn, and it doesn't look very nice. It doesn't look neat on the bear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and stitch it into the head of the bear whilst I'm down here. So let's just go up through that little stitch and just stitch it down into the head, up through a hole, and it's completely disappeared now. So you can do a lot of correction as you go along like that. So now where am I up to? Right, I've done that stitch. I now need to work over these 2 stitches here. So that's up through there. And down the other side and away from the head. Now don't worry if you're squashing the head a bit and it's all going out of shape. You can soon reshape your bear. Right, okay, I'll show you what we do when we get to this other side. I've now gone all the way into that corner where we started, and I've come out at this side, but I'm going to go over that corner again, just to really, because that's where it's going to really start to pull apart if these corners aren't sewn down securely. Down there, away from the ear. And now that's not going to lift at all, so I might just do one more. Through there and down there. Now we don't need to worry about the inside, we can just leave that, because although it looks like it's not stitched down, it won't go anywhere. So the rest of this thread, has to just be woven in through the holes of the head. You might want to just put it around a stitch, just to really anchor. Oh dear. Thread that needle again. As long as you don't cut it there, because then it'll fray. But if you just weave the tail through the head, and then you can pull tight and cut and you don't see it. And you need to do the same with the starting one as well. Weave that through. And there's the ears done. If you remember, when we made the little paws, they were 23 stitches going all the way up on each arm, if you like. But what we wanted to make sure was that when they faced in like this, that the back was slightly higher than on the front. So it was a case of just adding a few more stitches to one and taking a few more stitches off another, just so that you ended up with them looking like that, and that they just check that they are the same length. Because now when we sew them onto the body, they will overlap like that, and that'll overlap the loop, the underside. So I'll start with one. I didn't stuff it all the way to the top. There's a bit of a gap there, about that much, two rows, I suppose. And this time we are using the long tail. I didn't leave a long enough tail on this one. I'm not happy with that. I'm going to have to add more yarn to it, so that's going to be a problem later. But this one I did. Plenty of yarn, and it's not just a few threads out of the yarn, it's the full thread count, because the arms do get pulled about a bit when the teddy's being dressed. So they need to be on really, really securely. So if I grab a slightly bigger darning needle than I had previously, again, but with one with a really sharp point, then I would attach this. It's probably about 2 rows down and right there in the middle. You must get it in the middle, otherwise the clothes won't fit. There we go. And his little arm comes down the side like that. So I'm just going to push that through there and out through the centre. Knew that would happen. Goes around the arm. There, it's going right down the middle of the arm. So that's tightly in there. And then I'd just go down and catch this at the top of this one. And now we can really begin to put just a few stitches in there, round and round. So if the arm does get pulled, there's no way it's going to pull off. There's another one. Now I only put one stitch in the other side, so let's get a few more stitches in there. And 2. Now that is going absolutely nowhere, no matter how much somebody pulls. Again, I might just add a couple more. You don't want to add so many that it becomes bulky. And you'll notice I'm not going all the way across the arm. There's no need, as long as the corners are really nice and secure. You don't want to add any more bulk on top of there, but that's just fine. Actually, I think I've got enough yarn to do the other side, and I might just go straight through and put the other side on and not use the tail that's on that one. Okay, so I'll see you when I've got the other arm stitched into place. And now our final phase is to sew the head to the body using this long tail that we left, and you need a long tail as well because there's a lot of sewing involved. This is your last chance to really stuff out the body and the head, so you can still get your crochet hook up there and get as much packed in around the side, so he's got a nice chin and he hasn't got as I say, he's not a chinless wonder. He's got a nice shape going on there. And if you want to make sure this is packed out, you can put more stuffing in his shoulders, just to make him nice and firm, and something, you know, a firm base to put the head on. Now then, what we need is a darning needle. Thread your needle, and again this is a very sharp pointed darning needle. Now, if I can explain, what we don't want is the head to be all wobbly, so just adding a few stitches isn't going to cut the mustard. It's going to be a wobbly head, and you don't want that. So we're going to sew the head from here onto the body and slowly work out from the centre, working further out on the body and further out on the head, just to get a sort of larger surface area on which the head can sit and is nice and firm. I can't stress enough that the only way to do this is to have lots of stitches and to keep stitching. The first few stitches, the head will be wobbly, but as you start to spread the load, it'll start to firm up. So just be patient. It will all come good. So I'm going to line up that sort of semi on the front there to one side. So I'm going to line it up with there. And I'm just going to come out through anywhere on the body, really. And these first few stitches are just a sort of, oh, that doesn't help, does it? Right, excuse me while we just get rid of that knot. these few stitches are just to get the head in shape and make sure it's not twisted. So don't worry too much. Now, I've come out through a hole, so I'm going to go back in through that hole. So I'm not grabbing the actual stitch, I'm grabbing the stuffing that's inside the stitch, if you like. And I'm going to come up through the opposite side to where I went in. And then in through the corresponding hole there on that side. So that would make his head sit in the right position. So I'm going to come through there, and I might just come out again about here. Whoops. Now, if you haven't left a long enough tail, you might just need to add more yarn, but that's okay. You can hide the ends inside the body. I'm going to give him a bit of a tug. And I can tug him because if I'd attached that to a stitch, the body would have dinted in, but it's not. It's just the stuffing that's dinting. Mind you, you don't want to make a huge hole in the stuffing. But so now I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to go out the other side of the body. Just lightly press. Now, as I say, don't press too hard or the stuffing will disappear. So now I'm going to come, it gets harder as the head gets tighter onto the body. Don't worry about this. You can get some sellotape onto the stuffing. So I'm going to come out through here. Give a bit of a tug. And then I'm going to go through there. And I'll probably cross to the front again through there. There's no order or pattern. It's just a case of, as I say, spreading the load. Now the head is still wobbly. Give that a bit of a tug. Make sure his head's not twisting round and it's looking forward all the time. So now I'm going to go back through the body, but a bit further out this time, and back out through the other side, through a hole. Be careful not to get your yarn wrapped around the arms. And I've given a little tug. Right, so things are starting to look good, but he's still nowhere near. So I'm going to come up, back through the hole. I'm going to come further out there and there. Now then, this is where it gets difficult. And I'm going to come out through a corner hole. Just there. Giving it a good pull. Is he straight? Sort of looking to one side a bit, but that's all right. We can rectify that. So I'm going to come further out again on these ridges. Back through there, slightly further out. Don't sew him so tight down to the head that he's like necklace, but at the same time enough to stop his head from wobbling. I'm going to give a bit of a tug. Each time you tug, just check that there aren't any nasty indentations on the body or the head. And if there is, just take the back of your needle and pull out the stitches where you think you're getting some indentations. It's hard when you haven't got his eyes on yet. Whoops. How's he looking? Right. Come out through his head there. I'm going to go back through the body here and out the other side. Sorry, it's not easy doing this on camera. Give a bit of a tug. Check to make sure there's no indentations. And then go. Now I've come quite far out there. I hope that's not too far out. It's not going to flatten his head too much. But it really will help to... I'm going to come out of the body now. Now you can see his head is starting to really stay on. Bit of a tug there. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to actually spread the load a bit by bringing the yarn out through another hole. He's still a bit on, his head's a bit to one side, so I need to pull it down this way. So I might go, it's kind of following a path. I might go out through the back here. Whoops. Oh dear. Got his little leg caught up. And can you see how his head's sort of leaning over to one side? So if I can go in here, quite far out, but spread it to come back through the other side, down close to the bottom. Now on to the eyes. So place 2 little pins, if you've got them, to where you want the eyes to actually be. And they need to be about 1 stitch out from the nose, and 1 stitch below the top of the nose, so that he's looking straight at you. If you have them too far apart, he doesn't look as cute. So it's nice to get the eyes right close to the nose as possible, like that. Now find a hole at the back of the ear. So I'd say there's a nice clear hole, and feed, your yarn needs to be double thickness like this, and quite a long length. You'll see why in a minute. I'm going to feed my yarn through here. I'm going to come out just next to that pin. So I might just come out. Whoops. It's a bit tricky. I wish I had a longer darning needle. Oh hell, it's nowhere near. Here we go. I'll put it through there. Take out that pin. You have to squash his head a bit to pull through the yarn. Leave a decent long tail like that, because we're going to weave that in later. So quite a long tail on there. Now you need to place your needle right close up to the bear's head and wind this around 4 times, always pulling it down towards the head. So that's 4 turns. I'm then going to turn my needle. Don't go back through where that hole is, because the knot will disappear, but just go next to it through the stitch. That's why it's a good idea to have a needle with a sharp point on the end of it. And now I'm going to come out just at the other side where the pin is. Whoops. I want to come out there. Take the pin out. And if you slowly pull through, the tail catches all those wound pieces of yarn, and you get like a little knot. And that's what they call a French knot. So now you need to do the same thing at the other side. Let's just see where that is. Perfect. So now I'm going to wind it round. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put my needle in next to and come out through another hole, not through a stitch. Do make sure you come through a hole in the other side, and then slowly pull those threads through to catch the other knot. And there you've got 2 perfectly placed eyes. Now just take your needle if you've made that needs to be a bit smaller, so I'm just going to pull that eye a little bit. The idea is just to get them absolutely even like that. If you don't like them, you can easily just pull them out and start again. There, those are pretty nice actually. I'll just pull on this side. Whoops. You can fiddle about with them quite a lot to get them into a nice shape. I don't want them in a long shape, I want them in a round. So just fiddle about with them until you've got them just right. Now what you need to do is bring your needle back through that hole, not through the stitch, and out through another hole in the middle of the head. Pull that through, and just lift that and cover it with your needle. Cover any black mark that you can see. Then we'll need to snip off this thread. Now we need to thread the other side. I should have left a little bit longer on this side. And now I want to come back through that hole and out through the same hole that yarn is in. Pull that, and let's just pull that. And now, final stage, make sure you're now happy with how the eyes are, and that they're both pulled into shape. Perfect. And now I'm going to knot these two together. A double knot, cut short ties, and now it's a case of pushing this through into the head and sort of want to get rid of that black mark. So you need to kind of bring over the white stuffing and lose that. I'm just spreading white stuffing over the black mark. There you go. And there he is. All finished and gorgeous.